Hello, my name is Seong Chun from Ulsan National Institute of Science and Technology. On behalf of the first author Shakarim Sultanayev, I'm presenting our work on divergence approximations for unsupervised training of deep denoisers based on Stein's unbiased risk estimator. This is a joint work with Raja Jureis from Tel Aviv University and Yurina Elda from Weizmann Institute of Science. Let us first define some necessary notations. We are dealing with an additive Gaussian noise with Y, a noise signal, and X, a clean ground truth signal, and N, a zero mean white Gaussian noise with variance sigma square. Denoising is to find a x hat that approximates the ground truth x from the given noisy signal y. Lastly, denoiser is a function h of the noisy signal y, and this function h is parameterized with theta. The output of the denoiser is x hat. For the last several years, deep learning based denoisers have been investigated and outperformed state-of-the-art conventional denoisers such as BM3D. As illustrated in this schematic diagram, the noisy signal Y is fed into the deep neural network H as an input to yield the output X hat. Then, the output will be compared with the ground truth x by using a loss function, in here L2 norm. Once the error between the output and the ground truth is measured, it will be backpropagated to update the parameters of the deep neural network to reduce this error. This procedure is repeated with many images in the training data set multiple times, multiple epochs. This training procedure is called supervised training since the ground truth X is used during training. However, it is often challenging or even infeasible to obtain clean ground truth images. In this case, it is impossible to train a deep neural network-based denoiser in a supervised way. Recently, there have been some works on training deep denoisers in an unsupervised way without ground truth X. Loss functions and error will be modified not to include clean ground truth X. Here, we are focusing on defining a new loss function and a new error without ground truth X in this work. Stein's unbiased risk estimator, or so-called SURE, has been investigated for tens of years. Let us say that for a fixed x, the mean square error, or MSE, is defined as the L2 norm of x minus the output of the deep neural network. Then, the SURE is an unbiased estimator for the MSE as follows. Look at the second equation here. The first term measures the error between the noisy signal y and the output of the deep denoiser h of y. The second term compensates for noisy levels, which is sigma square, and the third term is a divergence term for the network h with respect to the input signal y. The SURE does not contain any ground truth signal x, while the SURE can well approximate the MSE. Therefore, SURE can be used as a loss function for unsupervised training of deep denoisers. Taking a derivative of this loss function with respect to theta can be used for backpropagation and network parameter updates. One problem of using a direct computation of divergence and its derivative is its high computational complexity. Training a deep denoiser does not only require computing divergence, but also need to compute its gradient with respect to theta for backpropagation. Therefore, it does not seem computationally desirable to use a direct computation for unsupervised training of deep noisers due to high computational complexity. One approximation to the divergence is so-called Monte Carlo divergence for sure, that was originally proposed by Ramani et al. As illustrated in this first equation, derivatives in the divergence computation is approximated as a difference in the divergence where a Gaussian random vector was introduced as n tilde. This approximation only requires a mild computational increase, which is about 2 times more due to the first term in the difference expression with a perturbed input y plus epsilon n tilde. Even though Monte Carlo divergence approximation works well with fast computation and small memory requirement, it does introduce a hyperparameter epsilon as shown in these red arrows. Unfortunately, the performance of a trained deep denoiser is often sensitive to these epsilons. It depends on sometimes on the different networks, data sets, and so on. These epsilon was able to be determined empirically for the best possible performance so far by performing some exhaustive search for epsilons. In this work, we investigated on the divergence approximation and proposed two methods to achieve the best possible performance of trained deep denoisers without searching for any epsilon or with some reduced amount of the search for the epsilon. First of all, we investigated the effect of smooth activation functions for trained deep denoiser performance. For Monte Carlo Schur-based training of deep denoisers, sigmoid activation functions yielded optimal performance for a wide range of epsilons. However, non-smooth ReLU activation functions yielded optimal performance only for a very narrow range of epsilon. In this work, we propose to replace non-smooth ReLU by soft plus function called log of 1 plus exponential to the power of x, so that optimal unsupervised training performance without ground truth could be achieved. This is very close to the supervised training performance with ground truth. The left figure shows soft plus function in green dotted line and ReLU function in the blue solid line respectively. They are similar in shapes, but one is smooth and the other is not. These two activation functions yielded almost the same performances for supervised training with ground truth as shown in table number 1. However, they yielded different performances for unsupervised training without ground truth X as shown in table number 2. While the ReLU activation functions yielded slightly lower performance in both set number 12 and the BSD68 datasets, the soft plus functions yielded almost the same performance to supervised training with ground truth X. Here are the average PSNR values over epsilon values in log scale for ReLU activation functions on the left figure and soft plus functions on the right figure. While ReLU activation functions yielded a relatively sharp maximum value for an epsilon value, smooth soft plus functions yielded a flat maximum values over a wide range of epsilons. Note that epsilons in here are all in log scale. Secondly, we proposed a new form of approximating the divergence in the Schur. While the previous Monte Carlo Schur had a parameter epsilon to tune for performance, This new Monte Carlo divergence contains no hyperparameter to tune, as shown in the last term of the second equation. Now, let us see if this new Monte Carlo divergence form still yields optimal performance in the next slide. Table 3 shows the PSNR performance and training time for BM3D, the sure with the original Monte Carlo approximation, our proposed new Monte Carlo approximation, and the MSC-based supervised training of deep denoisers as an oracle case. For the SDA with smooth sigmoid functions, the supervised MSE training and unsupervised sure and sure new trainings were able to yield similar performances. In this case, sure trainings required mild computational increases. DNCNN originally used ReLU activation functions, but here DNCNN now used soft activation functions. Both sure and sure new based training methods yielded excellent denoising performances when smooth soft activation functions were used. While it is still required to find an optimal epsilon for sure based training, sure new based training does not have any epsilon to tune, uh, but it requires a mild computational increases. So here's a summary of our work. So sure based on supervised training of deep denoisers achieved great denoising performance, very close to supervised training with ground truths using differentiable smooth activation functions like sigmoid or south plus. Epsilon parameters should be tuned precisely for non-linearities, while for differentiable activation functions, epsilon can take broad range of values. The new sure-based unsupervised training of denoisers also achieved high denoising performance close to supervised training without tuning a parameter. Thank you for listening.